Hello, hello, hello. Cheers, Kevin here, and welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Space Programming. Oh boy, I'm excited. We're episode 44, so we're getting up there in numbers, and we are launching one big ass rocket. Now you may notice at the very top here we have the Vanguard lander that we've been working on the past several episodes, working on hover scripts, working on suicide burns, getting this thing all ready to go. Now, normally, you're building something that you want to, be able to send to like the moon or other places. You use a good vacuum engine that's efficient and such. We didn't do that. We're using these thud side-mounted engines that are inefficient and stupid. The reason being is that we needed something that we could test on Kerbal, and these do have the requisite thrust-to-weight ratio. They are less efficient, however, and we have to have two of them for symmetry reasons, because I didn't want to have to figure out how to steer with an asymmetric flame thing. I don't know. But of course, that means that we need a much larger transfer stage, which in turn means that we need a big-ass booster. This is a cluster of eight engines, 4 of them rotating, 8 of them not. Oh boy, yeah, there we go. I'm not a photosensitive epileptic, but man, some days I feel like I could be. All right, I don't know if you can see quite in there, but this has got a 2-splitter, and those have 2 splitters coming out of them, so we've got all of these darn things mounted. These side boosters actually we don't jettison them. I suppose if we were doing asparagus staging, it would make sense to, but they actually drain at around the same time, so it didn't make sense to bother setting any of that up. But I feel like this is an important time to mention that just as in all of the, as with all of the craft in this series, I'm not touching any of the controls. I'm not flying any of this. I'm not super good at flying in Kerbal Space Program, so I'm actually quite glad not to. This is all being run with KOS, so we've got some scripts that are running on a little KOS module that's hidden there under the parachute on the very, very tip top of this thing. And of course, we're getting our way up there, and as soon as this thing reaches its target apoapsis, it will have main engine cutoff, and that'll be absolutely fantastic. So, and in fact, in this episode, I'm not touching anything at all. I am strictly, like, we're not uploading additional scripts. I may play with Time Warp if Time Warp gets a little bit weird, just because that's more of a visual thing and it's a little bit difficult to script. Occasionally the scripts get a little wonky, and I'll be obviously manipulating the camera to give you the best possible view of all of the science. Look at that science. All tessellated and pixely and, I don't know, some other words. But yeah, we're going to send this thing out and hopefully watch it land on the moon, and hopefully watch it come back, which is very, very exciting. And of course, we have a big script to do this that I'm going to jump over and kind of walk through while this craft is underway. And there we go. Okay, so we've actually just reached main engine cutoff, and I'm going to swap over to this file. And actually, let's jump over to the top of that. So this is the Vanguard mission script, because this is our Vanguard lander. And this actually looks very similar to stuff that we've been doing in the past, particularly our Herald satellites, which have been going out and placing themselves around the moon to be our cool satellite relay network. This is most of the steps here, actually, the initial steps at least, are nigh identical. Nigh identical? Is that a way to say things? I don't know how to words. All right. We are also including a local suicide library. Now, this is not the self-destruct library to end all self-destruct libraries, although that would be a very Kerbal-y thing to sort of include just for random reasons, like, oh no, it's the Kraken, quick, explode, abort, abort. No, this includes our suicide burn logic. In fact, it's a little, I've extracted the stuff that we did in the last episode, modified it a little bit. Let me show you real quick, actually. If we go into suicide, we have an exec. That's all that we get out of this. It takes in a bunch of arguments, and then it performs a burn, it seeks a landing area, and it lands. Now, performing a burn checks if there's an impact time, it uses some math. I've modified this a little bit. It's also going to, when we're trying to evaluate what things are going to be like if we're moving at full throttle, we're offsetting that based on the angle off of the horizon, off of the upward vector. We're also not using alt radar anymore when we're trying to figure out how far away from the ground are we. Alt radar is great for that because altitude gives you altitude above sea level. Alt radar theoretically gives you the altitude above terrain. But when you're around the moon and the terrain is not yet loaded, alt radar defaults to sea level, which is really sneaky. But by saying body geoposition of ship position terrain height, we can still get the terrain height, which is super, super awesome. So those are some small modifications. If you're setting up your own stuffs, you want to make sure to do that, because otherwise everything will be disastrous. But anyway, to the script itself. So we have this pre-launch stuff that's just setting some defaults, turning off the gear, setting the ship control, pilot main throttle, blah, 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 blah. We have the launch, which uses our wonderful ascent profile. Oh man, look at that rocket. It is just pointed in the wrong direction. This thing has absolutely no steering control. It'll pick up once it actually throttles up and starts to circularize. We had main engine cut off because our apoapsis reached the target altitude, which was fantastic news, and now we are circularizing. And of course, circularize, we have our transfer library, and we say, seek me in orbit. We give it some parameters. I say, here is the time, and I want you to freeze that time. So don't try and optimize it, just use that as it's specified. Take the radial and normal delta V components of your maneuver node and freeze those at 0 as well. And then start with 0 as your delta V in the prograde direction, but go ahead and tweak that and give me an orbit such that give me a maneuver such that the maneuver's orbit has a very low eccentricity. Of course, the lowest eccentricity is circular, and that's exactly what this thing got. So we have now lost our big-ass booster. It is gone. It is going off to, I don't know, explode somewhere, break up all across Kyrgyzstan. Sure, Kyrgyzstan. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if you got Kazakhstan, which is where all of the Russian Soyuz stuff all lands, Kyrgyzstan would have to be the general landing area for Kerbals, right? Makes sense. Okay, so we've done our circularization. I'm just trying to make sure that we keep up in our script with what's actually going on the right side of the screen. We are trying to perform a transfer. Performing a transfer to the moon, no less. We are seeking a sphere of influence change to the moon with a periapsis of 0. That's all we're actually doing. And we're going to go ahead and execute that maneuver. That's nice and simple. Now it goes out and it basically will tweak the orbit, looking at the nearest position between the moon and you on that hypothetical orbit, and it will go ahead and hill climb and find something really nice. And once it actually gets the transfer, then it'll go ahead and adjust it until the periapsis gets better and better and better. Now it's not doing any optimization on the delta V though, so I'm interested to see what this came up with. Let's go ahead and display our screen. So this found an 895 meter per second maneuver out to the moon, and look at that, isn't that just beautiful? Now it has a 239 meter periapsis. That's not bad. The reason for that is that we are not circularizing. We are going straight down. We are landing ourselves onto the moon. We have no time for getting into orbit, but more importantly, we don't have extra fuel for getting into orbit. What? What is this? Recent accomplishments have done something. We've performed a spacewalk in the orbit of the moon. What? No, we have not. That is a glitch from way too many reloads, maybe? We haven't done a space... No? Even then, I didn't do... I have no idea what that's about. Well, who knows? Maybe that's just early. I don't know. Okay, well, anyway, we are under time warp, and we are... Are we in the atmosphere? Or periapsis? No, we're not in the atmosphere. We're time warping, but I feel like we're time warping slow. No, okay, this is regular time warp. It's not physical time warp. Anyway, it is time warping ahead. It's preparing to transfer us out to the moon, which will be very, very exciting. We have a couple of additional steps, and this is because I've run this in a couple of different cases and discovered, oh, there's some edge cases. We have a correction. So basically, if we execute a maneuver and then we get really close but end up not having a transfer, we'll make a correction a little bit into our apoapsis, and we'll basically run the same thing. And then we're going to go ahead and warp to the sphere of influence. Now, we're using warp 2 multiple times, and so you're going to see KSB complain that, hey, we're already in time warp, shut up. But the reason is that occasionally it just would ignore warp 2, and so I said, well, fine, we're just going to spam it until we've warped to the place where I want to warp. Meh, I'm crabby. Then we're going to adjust our lunar periapsis, and what this is going to do is we're going to create a maneuver. We're going to have it seek a maneuver such that the orbit is not eccentric. We want a negative periapsis. But if it finds too negative a periapsis, it's going to end up spending an awful lot of fuel to do that, because we want to come down at a pretty vertical clip, right? And so, but we don't want to spend a whole bunch of fuel to cancel out our orbit. So I've gone ahead and just said, yeah, try and get a low periapsis, a negative periapsis, but if you get it too small, then your score is bad. Once that is in place, we will await being near the moon, and then we've got some suicide burn stuff. This is really fun. We've got, oh yeah, these lines don't even need to be here. For whatever reason, I forgot that we've thrust limited and junk. Okay, there we go. There's the warning I'm talking about. It's complaining that warp is already in progress, but that's fine. It's not breaking anything, and it was failing to warp sometimes when I was touching this stuff in the future. I should mention as well, we've not yet had a successful one of these happen. So We'll see what happens. Anyway, suicide exec, and we're basically just passing it these constants that we were using in the past. So turn on the gear and then execute a suicide burn and landing with this sort of descent speed, this burn cutoff, this max slope, this contact speed, all of this stuff. We're passing in a safe stage action, which will actually enable some stuff on the craft. If I jump over to the craft, actually, I think at this point I actually kind of have to confess to you, embarrassing as this may be, the engineers at KSC have suddenly received a message from the inactive transmitter on this craft. It seems that there is a stowaway on board, and I'm hitting the wrong. Map. It seems that there is a stowaway on board. Jebediah has snuck on this test craft, which was supposed to just verify whether or not it was possible for us to put Kerbals there, not try and actually do it. Anyway, this is going to use a fair amount of delta V just to flatten this out, but we want to come down it pretty close to vertical. Let's see. How's our fuel looking? All right, so this is using this stage. We've got this fuel tank is empty. This one is not. These tanks are locked, so they can't actually be used. The reason was that we wanted to make sure that these were drained first, so then when we discard them, we still got everything in these tanks. And we could have done that with fuel transfers as well, but it seemed easier to just do things this way. So we're burning up a lot of fuel just to sort of flatten out our trajectory, make sure that we come down at mostly vertical so that our suicide burn is super, super fun. And that, of course, means that I have this safe stage, which will stage, but then will also enable the fuel resource in both of those tanks. So that is all that we have kind of before landing. We've got the suicide burn, and the suicide burn, we're actually passing it that safe stage. So we can say, hey, if you're doing your suicide burn and you suddenly discover that you have no max thrust, here's what you can call to fix that. And yeah. Because otherwise we would need to have some way of interrupting the suicide burn mid-suicide burn. So we could say like, hey, are you out of fuel? Sad about that? Here's a solution. So anyway, we are warping now at a warp of 4, which is 100 times. We could have done this a little. Let's see how this is going to be a little bit. We've got a ways to go. We are in time warp, but it's going to be a while. And unfortunately, because I ended up having to use the same thing of basically this will reset, and that's why this text does not disappear. It is resetting the time warp to 4 every heartbeat tick, because yeah, if you just set it once, sometimes KSP seems to ignore you. So we have this set up so it's now tracking when our altitude is below 120 kilometers. And this was a little bit of a hack because it's just I happened to discover that, yeah, our suicide burn does not take place anywhere near that. So it's perfectly safe for us to set that as a time to wait for. But of course, in the meantime, we can watch this wonderful moon grow larger and larger in the distance. You can sort of see it. You can sort of see it growing. We are bringing ourselves down. So let's see, 120 is where, is it 120? Yeah, so we're at a million. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a ways to go. This time warp is going to be, we're about halfway there. Yeah. So we have these scripts. A lot of this stuff, it's actually surprising how much of this is reusable. And now, particularly our transfer library, we're able to just say, hey, find me a maneuver node that will go to the moon at this periapsis. Of course, it doesn't find the most delta V efficient because we just have it optimizing for periapsis, and it is a stepwise operation. So if it finds something that works, it will stay there. It finds local maximum, meaning it means if you're doing hill climbing and you find a little small molehill, you will stay at the top of that molehill because there's no direction where you can go in otherwise. There are techniques like simulated annealing and random restart. That's more of an optimization for that can fix that. And time warp, stop, please. Okay, we're out of time warp at 86 kilometers up from the surface, and the gears are deployed, and we are ready to go. So what this is going to do is it's going to start doing its suicide burn under the assumption that calculating its our available thrust based on this full mass. Once it discards, well, then we're going to have more thrust available to us, right? So what I expect to have happen is that this thing is going to fire for a while, possibly with a little bit of oscillation as it changes its mind about whether we're on the cusp, or we will have So it will do that, and then it will discard this stage. It will enable the fuel tanks for this, and then it'll go, hey, we can actually fall a fair bit further before we need to cancel out our velocity because, hey, I can thrust up with much more vim and vigor at this point. Vim not really have anything to do with this at the moment. But okay, so we are falling. We are now 50 kilometers. I'm very eager to see if this works. We are now at 680 meters a second. We're falling down, so we've got a fair bit of delta V to kill. But this would be stuff that would mostly have to kill if we were circularizing anyway. I mean, granted, we did end up doing that whole, like, hey, let's flatten out our descent to try and make the suicide burn a little more palatable. So we're using a bunch of fuel. Look at that. That's a very straight line. We ended up using a lot of delta V. But hey, we should hopefully be okay. And this leaves, we've still got both of these tanks. We have pretty much all the delta V in the lander itself, and hopefully this should be able to kill off what's remaining in this tank. Should be enough to kill off. Oh gosh, 730 meters a second, and we are 20 meters. We're less than 20 meters because the terrain is higher up. Feels like maybe this is a good time to maybe turn on those engines, Jeb. What are you thinking? Oh, there we go. All right. And yeah, it is oscillating a little bit because it thinks, okay, no, we're going to crash. No, we're fine. No, we're going to crash. No, we're fine. And once it runs out of fuel, it should jettison, and then I think it should have more margin. All right, 450, 400. Oh, gosh. Oh, boy. Uh-huh. Oh, gosh, this is nerve-wracking. Please don't crash. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. No, 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 no. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. That's amazing. Look at that. Look at that. It's okay. And okay, so trying to cancel out some velocity, which is fine. And now it's on its last little, it's doing its final descent thing. And it's doing, yep, that was a little spark thing for whatever reason. And there we go. Ha ha! We did it. It's suicide burn. It's sliding, but that's fine. This is totally fine. I think we also probably needed to do an unlock steering at the end of that, but it's fine. And yeah, okay, so the engine has exploded somewhere. We've landed on a pretty not insignificant slope. But hey, I'm fine with this, and we actually have solar power. Look at that. All right, we gotta get a beauty shot of that thing. Look at that. That is glorious. What is still exploding? I guess maybe the decoupler is like one of them physicsless parts that just bounces around a lot. Okay, I think we've finally come to a stop. Let's start getting ourselves some science because we are now here. Let's take a crew report. Yeah, 20 science. Wonderful. Let us log some pressure data. I mean, Jeb, as long as you're here, you might as well get out as well, right? We'll go ahead and log the temperature. Save that. Look at that. We've got a whole bunch of fuel left. I'm very optimistic about our chances at getting back. We'll log the seismic data. And yeah, those are the only instruments that we brought because this thing is, iffy. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quick save. I'm tempting fate though, because I really don't want to break that rule about not letting the Kerbals do anything. Okay, so Jeb is here. Can you do an EVA report? No. Okay. Well, take the data from here, I guess. Why not? Go ahead and turn on your RCS and turn on your RCS. Okay, fine. Yay, Jeb. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Ooh, there's a rock. Let's look at the rock. Can we plant a flag on the rock? Is it not? No, it's not. Okay. It's just ground scatter. It's not a real rock. Ah. All right, that is just okay. Ragdolling. Let's not die on our first landing on a foreign body. Okay. Let's go ahead and plant a flag. All right. All right. First landing. They said the ship wasn't ready, but I brought my own snacks. Too much green, I can't see. Is that? There we go. Yes. They said the ship wasn't ready, but I brought my own snacks. There we go. We have named the site. Wonderful. Let's take an EVA report. Oh, look at that. And let's take a surface sample. Oh, man. So much science. Wonderful. Let's see if we can get a wonderful shot of that. Like, face me. Oh, man. Okay. Little trick. I'd like to get I'd like to get Kerbal in there as well. You know, we can... There we go. Wonderful. Fantastic. Oh, man. Look at how beautiful that is. That's wonderful. And now it's just a question of whether or not we can get home. So, now we do have... So we have a contract that should be completed now. Yep. And there we go. We got some funds. We planted a flag on the moon. Nicely done. Thank you. And we have walked on the surface of the moon, and we have planted a flag on the moon. We get some science and some funds for that as well. We have another contract that if we can manage to snag this, grabbing some scientific data from space around Kerbal, that'd be nice. I've occasionally just used one of the satellites to do that, but I think we actually don't have anything at the moment that's in the exact right orbit for that. Actually, oh, no. Come on. Grab on. You can do it. Grab. There we go. All right. And now I want to quickly, before we do anything else, I want to show you a little bit more of this script. So the next steps after our perform suicide burn are await egress, which simply says if ship crew length equals 0, then next. And then we have await ingress, which is if ship crew length equals 1, then next. Then we have a secondary launch. That's the next step. And this program has continued to run, which is pretty darn cool because it means that as soon as we get back in the ship, this thing should launch all by itself. We're not, I meant what I said. We are not going to be pressing any buttons. We're not going to press RCS or anything and be like, that means go. We're just saying, hey, yeah, we'll just keep track. You have one allotted ingress and egress, and that's it. So with that said, let's get this thing back in the, get Jeb back inside, and we will go ahead and hit, was it B to get inside? Yeah, B. And look at that, it's already taken off at a very, oh boy. That's, okay. So I guess we don't have steering locked initially. No, we did have steering locked initially. Weird. We had steering locked to heading 9090. If you look in there, we said, okay, just throttle up for 2 seconds. The idea was that we would throttle up vertically, but all right. And now we're locked at a 45-degree angle. And we're done with that, so now we are just circularizing. Look at that, we're already up to circularizing. We've already planned our circularization, and we're just waiting to execute that maneuver. Yeah, there we go, recircularize. Find me a non-eccentric orbit at apoapsis. And it's found one, it is going to execute it. Then we are going to run seek SOI. Now we wrote seek SOI, the idea of, hey, find me something that will get me an orbit around, get me into orbit around the moon. It turns out the exact same logic, though, works for going from the moon back to Kerbal, so we didn't have to change any of that. We've got warping until the SOI, and then we've got some correcting the periapsis type of junk. That's all fine. All right, we have circularized. Let's look at how our fuel is doing, because that's the... Ooh, that is making me nervous. That makes me very nervous. How are you? Oof, and it's not finding great. It's finding pretty expensive transfers. Well, okay, it's not even finding... This is going to be very, very iffy. I'm scared now. Oh, man, it is finding just terrible, terrible, terrible maneuvers. Okay, it found one, but it is 700 meters a second of delta V. This is a 13... Oh, man, I don't know if we have that, guys. I don't know if we have that to spare. I mean, it does get us to the right periapsis of 30 meters a second, 30 kilometers, which will put us back. We're going to have to see how this does. I think this is going to stall out, though, which is not promising. And unfortunately, as soon as it does that, it's also going to ditch. Oh, I didn't even think about this. We're not going to get any of the science back. Oh, no. Can I transfer it from... No, I can't transmit it. Well, I could transmit it, I guess. Yeah, let's try and do that, because it will auto stage activate. Review data. Transmit. Okay, we're transmitting that. Review this. Transmit. Cool, we're getting some of this data off-world. Review this. Oh no, it's gone. And it's staged because it was trying to complete that maneuver, which is very worrisome. How are we looking? We are looking really, really bad. That is disappointing. Okay, well, That is very depressing. I have to admit, I have tried this in the past, and we launched with less fuel, and we ended up in a similar situation. And I've already kind of gone through and tried to mitigate as much as possible. Now, I do know for a fact that if we had enough fuel, we'd be fine, because I did actually test this without a landing. So I tested basically a flyby and then trying our, get ourselves a maneuver back, do our small correction, and then perform a reentry burn, which is just burn off any remaining fuel when we get to, close to things, and then, yeah, just stage. But sadly, oh man, I mean, the thing is, there's not even we can't even really get out and push, because this thing does not have enough mass. And if I've actually, I did try this as well, getting out of here, EVAing, and then pushing, it wobbles all over the place. So there's actually not a way for us to get back, even if we were to go out and try and push our way out. It's very, very, very disappointing. I think, as depressing as this is, man, that's depressing. For want of 194 meters a second of delta V, this would have at least, it would have failed early, but we would have at least have been on a return trajectory. But at this point, there is nothing for Jeb to do. It is but for us to say, this is why you don't sneak aboard secret test aircraft, rocket craft, because you end up leaving disastrous nightmares in the minds of people who write scripts. But on the slightly positive side, we've done some science. And we've transmitted some of that. So yeah, look at that, 123 science. You know what, Jeb? The positive news is, well, I mean, so the bad news is we can't get anything out here to rescue you, but the good news is that we can unlock larger engines, which should mean that we can transfer, we can bring stuff with more significant amounts of fuel, so that this never happens on our watch again. So, Jeb, we hardly knew you, and we thank you for your service. We salute you for your bravery and your moxie, and your decision to totally just ignore protocol and fly out here for no good reason. And we tried to put Nan onto the stack because the engine. I think Jeb, in a little victory lap, proud of his accomplishment nonetheless, died doing what he loved, decided to do a quick EVA and see just what he could see in the last few moments. And with that bittersweet, yeah, with those bittersweet moments, I will have to say we will see you next week for more Kerbal space programming. Cheers.